Okay, and so you can see there I am hovering over this corner of the part. So that's where the spindle is going to sit, and it'll make all of its references from there when it comes to me programming my code into this machine. And so that's where it's important to note this button on the controls says ABS and INCR. That stands for absolute or incremental. Those are just two different ways to read what's called G&M code, or G code for short. In this case, we're going to be operating in absolute values, and that's why you can see I've got the ABS on my screen. Okay, if I were to press the button, it'll change to incremental. Okay, but since we're concerned with absolute today, that's what we're going to focus on. So now it's just a matter of changing out my edge finder for my bit, and we're ready to program my computer. Here I have an 1/8 inch bit, and so I'm just putting that into this 1/8 inch collet. Okay, so here again, as I mentioned before, you can see our bit is directly over the very corner of our part. It'll make all of its references from here on to cut things out. So at this point, we're ready for the big moment. The time has come to, if I can find it, it's in my pocket here somewhere, upload our program. So here I have my handy dandy flash drive with my NC file on it that I wrote in CNC Motion and verified to make sure that I'm running a safe procedure and I'm not going to break my machine or my bit or throw my part out of the vise. So now that I've verified my code, I'm ready to take my flash drive and plug it in. Okay, so now that I've got my flash drive plugged in, I'm going to press my program button again, and you'll see we go back to this screen, which is going to pull up, when I pull up my file, it's actually going to show me what it's going to cut on this black part of the screen. So once I've hit my program button over here, I'll come over here to a button that says Program Functions, and I'm going to have to find my right file. Now, one issue is that oftentimes this clausing will look for MPT files, but I have an NC file. So how do I make sure that it can actually find what I'm looking for? Well, I'll just press this Program Type button, and you'll see it gives me options. Do I want to use MPT files, NC files, DXF files, G files, or just all files in general? Well, since I know that mine is an NC file, I'm just going to go down one here. I'll use my same controls right here. Okay, and I can see I have selected that, so I'm going to press Enter over here. Okay, so now you'll see up here at the top of the screen, hopefully there's not too much glare, here are my files. So the one I want here, I've got two versions of this file. It says G-code initials for NDS, and then you can see it trailing off, but it says R there. And then I have G-code initials NDS. This is where it's important to make a note about the difference between I and J values and R values when it comes to programming G&M code. So when I pull this up in the way I had initially coded it, the way I had initially programmed it with I and J values, this machine can't read it. It reads everything as errors, and so this one can only do its angled cuts, its rotating like circular cuts based on R values, even though they're the exact same thing. So it's very much the same way that people speak different dialects of the same language, where in one part of the state people might say hello, and in another part of the state people might say howdy. It's the same thing with machines. They're speaking the same language, but they have sort of a different dialect. In this case, the clausing CNC mill or NC mill does not speak hello. It says howdy. And so it does not read I and J values, it only speaks R values. So I'm going to select the version that has R values here. Okay, and you can see it's got my G code running down the line here. And so I'm going to select it. I'm going to hit Use over here. Okay, and now you can actually see what it's going to cut out. Again, I hope there's not too much glare on the screen. It has my initials, NDS, up here on the screen. So as I prepare to actually run my code through this machine, I need to make one safety precaution. These handles, they're sticking out right now so that I could crank them manually if I so chose, but the problem is that once the computer takes over, it's going to spin these very rapidly, and if I was standing there, it could really do some damage. So to make sure that these handles aren't sticking out, I'm just going to pull them out and then swing them down. And I'll do the same for both of my axes, my X and my Y. So now things should be safe.